So first, let me introduce you to our panelists. First up, we have Eben, Britton, who's the co-founder of TrūOrganics, which is a holistic line of pain relief and wellness products. He's also a former NFL player, a host, and an author, so a man of many talents. We have Kate Denton, who's the CMO of MedMen, which is a leading management services and investment company in the industry. And if any of you really want to see what the future of cannabis retailing looks like, I would advise you to visit a MedMen store. And don't be surprised if you think you've walked into an Apple store. It's pretty amazing. We also have Derrick McCarty, who's the CMO of Hmbldt, a health and wellness company. They're best known for their vaporizing device, the Hmbldt Dose Pen, which was actually nominated as one of Time magazine's top 25 inventions in 2016. And finally, we have Renee Rodriguez, who is the CMO of Advanced Nutrients. This company is really a pioneer brand in the space, and it's the #1 hydroponic nutrients company in the world. So as there's a lot of you who are thinking about dipping your toe in the cannabis waters or maybe dabbling in the space, I thought it would be interesting to hear from each of our panels just a fun fact on how they got into the business and what they were doing before. So we'll start with you, Eben.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you, ThinkLA. This is very exciting. I played pro football. I played 6 years in the NFL. Suffered a laundry list of injuries. Really, how that is approached in the league is a lot of prescription pills and a lot of opiates. And for me, a guy who's raised in a holistically minded family where food is medicine, exercise to take care of yourself, use whatever herbal remedies are available before going to see a doctor for a prescription, cannabis was always very intuitive for me to come back to as an athlete, especially as I got into my pro career when, the injuries were piling up, pain is a daily occurrence, having to get out of pain and produce day after day in practice and in games is 100% of your responsibility. And so the pills made me feel insane. The prescription anti-inflammatories like Cataflam and Indocin, these are next generation Celebrex and Vioxx, things that really wreak havoc on your intestinal, your digestive system, your kidney and liver. And then opiates were very common throughout the week and dealing with pain for practice as well as getting ready for games. And intuitively, I just found myself coming back to cannabis over and over. When the pills made me feel insane, made it really difficult to sleep, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning with withdrawal symptoms, I could smoke a joint and be taken out of my physical pain and also be able to rest and heal and recover, feeling emotionally and spiritually rejuvenated for another day of practice, another day of the grind. So coming out of my football career and being a guy who used cannabis throughout my football career, throughout my athletic career, I realized that there's a ton of guys that are dealing with a lot of issues coming out of their football careers that have never thought of or heard of the possibility of cannabis as being an alternative to the opiates and the pharmaceuticals that are given out in the league, as well as what it can do for these issues of concussions and CTE. So coming out of that, I found myself writing about my experience in the NFL, whether that had to do with injuries like my dislocated shoulder or herniated disc in my back, to the drug policies and drugs and how it's dealt with in the NFL. And that really sort of organically led into this cannabis advocacy and understanding that, as a pro athlete, I really had this platform to speak about, this really powerful plant-based medicine that is doing wonders for a range of people, from children with epilepsy disorders like Dravet syndrome to military veterans with PTSD. And then, you find pro football players somewhere in the middle, guys who are coming out of their careers, they're addicted to pills, be it opiates, antidepressants, antipsychotic medications, to these very devastating neurological disorders that are presenting themselves as CTE, like this New York Times article that just came out a few weeks ago discussed. So these are very real issues facing the NFL. So for me, coming in and I wanted to create something that I could get to the guys, in Mississippi, in the states that, have no cannabis environment whatsoever, and to be able to at least give them a starting ground of CBD and get them something to get them some relief and to start building this platform of awareness and understanding of what this plant can be. That's part of why I created TrūOrganics. And also, just looking at what this can be for concussions and pro football players, it's something that, I'm very passionate about.
Wow. So that's a lot, and it's really important. You make my story sound really shallow. So hello, everyone. Kate Denton. I am, as Lorna said, the CMO at MedMen, which is a management company operating a number of retail stores, as well as a private equity fund that invests in the cannabis space. My entry point into cannabis was much less personal, but equally as impactful for me from the moment that I walked into my first MedMen dispensary. I think I'd spent 13 years of my career at Pepsi and at Kraft Foods doing traditional brand management. I love consumers, I love marketing. I was bored out of my mind in those products, so I left and I went to music, and I was at Capital Music Group, learning how to market at the speed of culture in the music industry and really shaping what's happening in perception of the marketplace. I came to MedMen's dispensary on a whim with a friend, and I was blown away by the sophistication of the brands in the space. And I think from that moment on, I knew that I wanted to be part of the cannabis industry. I was at the time, I was a new mom, and I was not a cannabis user, but I was just blown away by the sophistication in the space, so started doing a bunch of research. And then my tipping point moment was, I was meeting with my friend Musa, who's the chief brand officer at Ford, and I said, what did you do? Why did you decide to leave Apple and go to Ford? And he said, I wanted to know if I could be great. I wanted to know if I could make markets. I wanted to know if there was something really exciting for me. And I thought, shit, for me, that's cannabis. Like, I know this is where I'm supposed to be. And came back to Los Angeles and more or less left and came to MedMen soon after. My job is really exciting. And for those of you who aren't in cannabis but want to be in cannabis, whether for yourself or for your agency, I don't think there is a more exciting consumer marketing challenge in the world today. This is the place to be, and this is the place, if you think you're a good marketer, this is a place to cut your teeth and find out, because the opportunity in front of us, Derrick and I talk about it all the time, is so incredible. The challenges are bigger than any other marketing challenge you're ever going to face. You're not going to go from trying to sell 3.2 units of orange juice to 3.4 units of orange juice and be like, shit, Mom, I made it. Like, this is great. I'm so successful. I mean, it's a dynamic change that you're trying to make in the marketplace and trying to convince people that cannabis is okay. And what's crazy about it is that a lot of people already believe cannabis is okay. And so the consumer hurdle of telling them that is the heavy lifting isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, but giving them permission and helping them understand that it's a safe environment to shop in, that the products are safe, that there are that are brands and partners within the space that help you with dosing to understand, if you're a new consumer to the space, how much you should consume. Daniel on our PR team would probably kill me for saying this, but there's a lot of people who come into the category and then leave when you have an experience like smoking a joint that was passed to you at the Frank Ocean show at Coachella, and you have to sit down in a field for 3 hours because you're not really sure what happened.
Hypothetically.
I'm not saying that happened to me, but I heard about it from somebody. And that's part of my job, is to help craft experiences for people that are existing users or lapsed users or are just interested in the space, help you find a way into the category, help you feel safe, help you have a great experience, and make you excited to come back and try more of the products in a responsible way. So that's what I'm working on right now, and we'll talk more later.
Cool. Hi. Can I say, before I go, I start to ramble, how many people are in agency world here? I know ThinkLA is a big community. Okay, and marketers. Cool. So I guess thanks, the obligatory thank you for having us. And I think so. I'm the CMO of Hmbldt, where we talk about ourselves as a cannabis-based health and wellness company. We do so to make that distinction because it's important to start to talk about positioning, to start to talk about and remind people that that's the historical role of cannabis. I think as Eben said, it's been probably the most effective campaign of misinformation, and I don't mean that from a paranoid standpoint. It's literally, that's the current relationship with cannabis has been 100% dictated to you, to all of us, by an institution that had the only, a single and unilateral message that they could benefit from, and they won. And I think kudos to them. But I think, as Kate said, and it's what you'll hear throughout the course of tonight, it's an amazing opportunity to kind of be on the right side of history. I come from advertising. I worked at Anomaly and 72 and Sunny and BBH, running accounts like Budweiser, Target, and Google. I chose to come to the industry for a couple of reasons. One, my good friends at Anomaly were backing a startup. At that point, we hadn't launched anything, and they reached out. Part of what they do is they focus on developing innovative products and backing ambitious companies. And it was an amazing personal opportunity. I think on the other side, it's the best creative breeze possible, right? I mean, this is literally the opportunity to change how people relate to a product, like we said, that had a unilateral message. And I think it is literally the best opportunity you had. As Kate said, where are you looking for an opportunity where you're actually going to prove your mettle, where you're actually going to demonstrate that you have the ability to have an impact? And I was massively excited about it. I think on a personal side too, as I had started off in the nonprofit world, I realized that advocacy was not the best way to win people over. You can't win people over by just continuing to repeat your message. It's not going to actually convert anybody. You'll continue to empower your base. And I went into advertising to learn, and marketing to learn how to actually win and grow an audience. But I always wanted to get back to a socially conscious, or an institution or a product or a company that had a good moral base. And when this opportunity came up, it felt like the right time to do it. So.
Hi, my name is Rene Rodriguez. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Advanced Nutrients. Unlike my fellow panelists, I didn't want anything to do with this industry, to be honest with you. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an investor. I come from, a lot of you, we shared the same world. I come from the branding and marketing space. I've owned 4 boutique branding agencies with, clients like Nike, Audi USA, Harvard University, et cetera. I successfully exited 3 of those, and one of them closed down because I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 13 years ago, which I've since recovered from. Thank you. Thank you. I happened to attend a mastermind in Utah for a bunch of high-level entrepreneurs, and I saw this 6'7" guy having a conversation with someone else about Instagram, and this guy has a very larger-than-life personality. His name is Big Mike. You could see him in that magalog that's on your chair. Any rate, Big Mike is a pioneer in the industry. He's been in this business, or he opened Advanced Nutrients in 1999. He was a grower for about 34 years. He's innovated over 50 firsts in this industry. So I was listening to a conversation he was having there up in the mountains of Utah with some guy who was telling him how to grow his Instagram account. and the guy was just full of shit, didn't know what he was talking about. So I waited for them to finish talking. Then I approached him, introduced myself, and I said, look, here's what you ought to do. And then he didn't leave me alone for 6 months and just kept trying to recruit me away from what I was doing at the time. I was the CEO for a company called Knowledge Society, which is in the personal development space. It's owned by a guy named Ty Lopez. You might have seen him on YouTube. He has over 1 billion video views. And I took that company from pre-revenue to $3 million a month in 18 months. And so Big Mike tried to recruit me away forever, and it just, I just wasn't that interested. I didn't know anything about the space. I didn't know anything about the community. I didn't really smoke pot that much, to be honest with you. So I was like, I don't know what I have to offer this space. And plus, becoming the CMO felt like a demotion to me, and from where I was as the CEO of that company. And he eventually, just kept persisting. And then one day I had a conversation with my mom, and I said, hey, this guy's trying to recruit me over to the cannabis space. What do you think? And she said, remember that day we were sitting on your patio and you told me you wanted to smoke marijuana? Because I hadn't eaten at that point in like 7 days because I was going through my cancer treatments. And she said that she had never seen me as peaceful than I was that day when I had consumed some cannabis. I called him the next day and I accepted the offer. So that's why I'm here. I'd like to also thank ThinkLA for having me here, and for Jim for putting my name forward, and Lorna for moderating.
Thank you. So we heard a lot about consumers and branding and how they got into the business. So I'm curious, as I'm sure the audience are, given the kind of current prohibition on traditional marketing, what kind of platforms are you using to reach your consumers socially? What kind of advertising and media platforms are you using? And do you have any tips for the audience on how to navigate, the kind of the regulations and what to do and what not to do? So maybe we can start with Kate.
Get to it.
Awesome. So I'm 9 weeks into the job, and we haven't had our Instagram shut down in my 9 weeks, so that's a good thing. We have had our Google AdWords campaign shut down about every 3 days. So some things are good, some things are not so good. I think what's really interesting about this space, especially for those of you who are at agencies, and you really have to think differently in a lot of ways about everything that you can do, but at the same time, the products aren't that different from a general consumer packaged goods product. And so there's a lot of tools and tricks that are different than what you're used to, but you just have to be smarter, more creative, and operate within the legal limits. My best friend at the company is regulatory affairs, because they can tell you what's going to be approved at not just at the state level, but at the local level, and also be a good gut check partner to say this is what we should be doing, even if the state laws aren't clear on how to operate at this time. For us, because we are a retailer, the best marketing tool we have is our actual retail environment, which I highly encourage all of you to come to our store in West Hollywood. Venice is being redone, so if you go there and you think, Lorna way overpromised on what this experience is, I'm sorry. Come back early next year, it'll be awesome. Come to West Hollywood right now. What we see from a consumer hurdles in terms of allowing them permission or feeling like they have permission to come in and shop the cannabis space starts with your dispensary experience. If you go up to a place that has bars on the doors and someone with a gun, and you can't see inside and you don't know what the brands are, it's just like, who's going to want to shop there, right? So if you go to our stores, you see it's very open, it's light, it's airy, it's like an Apple store. You can see the products, you can hold the products. You don't have to have a medical card to come in and shop, but you do have to have one to buy any of the products that are available in the store. That is our primary way to get people, a primary advertising tool that we have, and it's very critical for us. In terms, my role as the CMO of the company is also to support all the small brands that are trying to break into the space to help us create media tools. So I'm open to listening to anyone's pitch. Tomorrow, not tonight. I have a baby at home. I got to get home to the baby. But tomorrow, I'll listen to your pitch, because I think that there's an incredible opportunity and responsibility from those of us that are in the space to support entrepreneurs that are being smart and clever and creative and creating ways for us to be able to communicate with consumers. And the reality is that the consumer base is so wide. I need tools to reach my mom's friends that are thinking about cannabis for ALS and for cancer, and or just because they want to smoke a joint, that's fine too. I need to reach them. I need to reach the 21-year-old males in Santa Ana that love shatter. I need to reach like what we call the Chardonnay moms. All of those people have very different media habits, and I need different tools to reach them. And I'm very, very invested personally in making sure that we're helping support the entire marketplace, because the tools aren't simple, right? And there's no obvious choices. There are a few major players, but I think that as I look towards rec in 2018, I need a much, much broader audience, and I need less tools that are focused on reaching current cannabis users. I don't need someone who can give me a platform to show people smoking a joint. Like, people know about smoking joints, it's cool, whatever, that's fine, but I need a platform that's better at delivering a sophisticated message than just continuing to hit the same people over and over and over again. So I don't know if that is helpful at all, but
Derrick, I can see you nodding your head in agreement. Do you have something?
Yeah,
to add?
I mean, I think, especially as marketers, I mean, you know, for the people that have been in the agency world and people on the client side, I mean, I think it starts, I think the reason why I'm nodding my head when Kate says it comes down to your experience, right? Don't ever become disconnected or create a brand or put any energy that's disconnected from the direct experience that you're offering. You know, when I started with the company, for those who haven't seen Hmbldt products, we position ourselves around benefit. We've designed our products to deliver specific and targeted benefits. We've got 6 formulas. They literally say the benefit in giant letters on the box. It's, you know, we have a product called Sleep. It says sleep. I have to position. I mean, it was almost delivered to me on a silver platter, the strategy, which was, okay, A, does the product work? Let's put every dollar that we spend towards marketing, we have to spend 1,000 times that on making sure that the product is perfect. And then you have to stand by it, right? And I think, you know, especially, I mean, I think this is true I would recommend this for any category, but most specifically, it's in the power of the consumer, right? You know, I could buy my way into influencers, I could buy my way with some, you know, hokey Instagram strategy. But if they get to the door and they have a shitty experience, what good does that do? And instead, I could create an amazing product, I could partner with great people, and I could spend every ounce of effort in making sure that that experience, in close proximity to that product, encourages people to fall in love with it. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And I think when it comes down to how we reach new people, I think it is an interesting play right now. I think, you know, the cannabis space does not necessarily mean strictly cannabis people. And I think that's an interesting challenge. That audience is amazing. They're powerful buyers. They spend a shit ton of money, as you know, and they are massive advocates. We know and where to reach them. I think the future is the consumers that aren't thinking about cannabis, but are thinking about, how the fuck do I find a solution to fall asleep? Sorry, I shouldn't swear. But how do I fall asleep, right? I'm an agency person. How do I fall asleep, right? The pharmaceutical industry is essentially teeing up the rise of cannabis in the most perfect way possible. I apologize if there's anybody from the pharma space here, but watch out. Like, literally, you treat your customers horribly, right? You're poisoning people, and then you're basically lying about it. It's amazing how, and cannabis is sitting here going, we'll lead with love, where our entire culture is based on being empathetic. Oh, and by the way, it's a plant. Oh, and by the way, it's the fastest growing industry that is repelling all the energy that you guys, took you 80 plus years to kind of come up with this idea that cannabis was bad and perpetuate it. We're gonna destroy it in 10. And I think the story that we tell around that has to be have the broadest appeal, and that's by being smart with your channel mix and, more importantly, smart with your messaging mix around it.
But I think you hit on a really important point, which is like, don't forget those very basic packaging elements. I mean, I'm looking at our stores and I'm looking at the brands that are within our dispensaries and saying like, well, I know how we shop this right now when you're seeing a couple hundred patients a day, but what if it's a couple thousand? All this packaging's gotta go, right? It's not easy to shop, it's not easy to merchandise. And they're like, well, it's about the discovery and it's awesome. I'm like, no, it's not, because I have to have someone re-merchandise that shelf every single time someone wants to come over and buy your product. And so those really basic things are super important, and they will help your velocities in store and will help you build your business. We'll work on getting people in. You help me sell your products in a more effective way. I mean, Derrick and I are working together on a number of different initiatives and just helping communicate more clearly to the consumer and help them feel safe trying the product. Yeah. It's really basic. But it's really important. We've seen huge results.
And it's the non-sexy stuff, and I think that's, as an agency partner, you can forget that. I was talking with the guys from Anomaly, and we literally had this, we were going through our brand book, and it was like full of like fluffy BS, like things like, oh, we're health and happiness and blah, blah, blah. We were missing the business problem, right? Retail is I can't think of anything until I get retail right? And it's the same for every other category, is that you can pay, the ROI on my spend is going to be infinitely more, Jesus Christ, sorry. It's going to be a lot greater for every dollar I spend at ROI, at retail. It's the same thing in terms of the product, it's product, and the nearest proximity around that. Sorry.
So we've heard a lot about culture today from the legal panel before, and Eben, I know you had some interesting thoughts on normalizing the messaging when you're getting into this space. So, in thinking about the future of cannabis and the future of the consumer, what are your thoughts on how to do that and what works for you?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with what these guys are talking about. And, I think in the big picture, in many ways, weed sells itself. Like, you don't have to go around and convince people to smoke weed because it'll be fun. I think that story is set. But the truth is that, 10,000 years of anecdotal information, people telling stories about the positive effects that cannabis has had in their lives, I think that's something to tap into. That's something that we need to look at. And in normalizing this, movement, this ideology that cannabis and plant medicines can really lead us to this new path of wellness. I think that people are people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. People are sick of the opiates. People are sick of their doctors really not knowing what's going on and how to treat the things that they're dealing with. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to what we're putting into our bodies. And for most of, American culture, we've gone totally blind to this concept. And I think cannabis really brings us back to that. And cannabis, in this idea of being incorporated into a healthy lifestyle, really is something that can help you sleep, that can, help you deal with, everyday pain, chronic pain issues that, over 100 million people are dealing with in this country alone. I mean, normalizing cannabis through, normal people. I mean, really, I go to a lot of cannabis conferences. I've spoken at a ton of them. And frankly, a lot of it is just preaching to the choir. It's talking to people who already know about this thing that, want to be legitimized for using an alternative medicine to treat whatever that it is they're dealing with, be it cancer, a traumatic brain injury from a car crash, they're a military veteran. And getting into forums like this locally, I mean, in LA, we're in a bit of a bubble because it is so cannabis friendly and health minded region. But I think that normalizing it to the heart of the country where, it's really difficult to get out of bed every day because you've got to pop pills and you can't get to work. It's hard to be a parent. It's hard to, approach your daily tasks as an individual in your community. I think cannabis is a solution to a lot of that. And, bringing that awareness, the understanding that we have this endocannabinoid system in our bodies that produces the same cannabinoids that are found in the cannabis plant, and getting people to understand those types of things, it's very important in normalizing, this industry and, this way of living is what it really is. Because, it's another tool in your tool belt at the end of the day, rather than being somebody that thinks of it as this counterculture drug that I'm going to take at a party. It's like, oh, this is this thing that I take daily that helps with my blood pressure, it helps me stay sane, it helps me sleep, whatever it is. And I think that building out that message, building out that understanding and that education is really important to the industry.
So we've so many more questions, but we're kind of running out of time. So I'd love to ask Renee, and then maybe the rest of the panel if there's time, given the audience, what's the best piece of advice or marketing advice you could give them, especially if they're looking to get into the industry? And how do you, with so much going on, how do you keep focused on the right things?
Well, thanks for the question. I think it's not, how you stay focused and how you go about marketing in the cannabis space is not any different than any other space, in that you've got to embrace the constraints that are there. If some of you guys have been in an agency world for a long time, you went from traditional print media to the web. There were lots of constraints with the web, and you adapted to that, and things worked okay. So it's the same within the cannabis space. Now look, social media, paid social media isn't going to save you, right? There's still a lot of prohibitions on social media in terms of advertising on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. There are things that you can do that if you have. There are cannabis-friendly platforms or platforms created specifically for cannabis, like Mantis, which has about 60 or so pot websites that you can run ads on, similar to Google AdWords. But we have, for example, for AdvancedNutrients.com. We have AdvancedNutrients.com is a sanitized website. There's not a mention of cannabis on there. Although, which was a big culture, or a big fight within our company, because, culturally, we're not the kind of company that hides behind a tomato plant and a cucumber. We put pot right on our packaging. We're very upfront about it. Our products are created specifically for cannabis. We don't hide behind that. So when I went to the CEO and the president, said we need to create a site that we can use for marketing, they thought I was nuts. They thought they made a mistake in not making me that offer, but I proved it to be right. We've grown tremendously over the last year. We went from 60 million to 105 million in a year in revenue, and a lot of that has to do with, again, just sort of embracing the constraints, doing a lot of A/B split testing, find out what's working for you and your audience and your product. And I agree with everything that everyone said here in terms of, a lot of people are focusing on advertising and how to market, and they're not putting enough emphasis on their product. I think it doesn't, great advertising isn't going to fix or save a shitty product. So make sure your product and your branding and your packaging is as good as it can be, and it speaks to the audience that you're trying to target, and then figure out how to market to them. Again, there are lots of little tips that I can give you guys, but Mantis, again, if you want to go off network, off the mainstream networks. But we occasionally, and you will, I would suggest strongly not to try to push Facebook or Instagram or Twitter to accepting ads. You will get away. Occasionally, you'll see some ads on cannabis out there that are very specific. Those people will eventually get their ad accounts shut down. And if they abuse it enough, because you could have multiple ad accounts on Facebook, for example, you could have like 10 ad accounts. And if you abuse it enough, they'll shut down all your ad accounts, they'll shut down your page, and you're done, at least on Facebook and Instagram. So you don't want that, but you can, again, like we do a lot of advertising that is sanitized. It doesn't mention cannabis. Occasionally we mention a high-value plant or whatever, but for the most part, it's just it's more brand extension. And then we also do a lot of stuff that's just kind of more PR related. We do a lot, we happen to be fortunate in that we have, kind of a larger than life CEO. So he gets a lot of interview requests, and we do a lot of things like that really help us out. We do a lot of trade shows. We invest, millions in trade show a year. We're at almost all of them. Usually the premier sponsor. We do a lot of the pot mags and that sort of thing. So, but all those tactics are just that. They're just tactics, and those are all things you can just Google right now and find out how to do. Just going back to the basics of business in terms of really, embracing, your product, your branding, your marketing, and just or your advertising and your audience, and making sure that you're optimizing. Doing split testing. We're really big on. We know we're an evidence-based marketing department. We don't, intuitively. I've been in branding and marketing for 30 years almost, and So I think I have a pretty good gut feel for what's going to work and what's not. But we don't really go off my gut or anybody else's, not even Big Mike's. You know, we'll put comps together. Everything that goes through our department goes as something like this. Jackie, my project manager's here. Things will get bubbled up to her throughout our department. We have team members around the world. Comps then come to me. I approve the final 2 or 3, and then we split test. We don't make assumptions on what's going to work. So using those principles, whether it's on social media, in print advertising, split test online. It's super cheap. You can get a statistically significant answer within a couple of days if you're running some ads on Mantis, for example. And then you can decide, okay, will this creative work better than that creative? And then run that on social media or on an ad in High Times or whatever you're doing. So I'm going to stick around after this if you guys want to ask me more specific questions to your situation. I'll likely be sitting down because I'm recovering from an injury, but feel free to come up to me and ask away.